Hey queens, no Chick-fil-A sauce? Welcome back. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Garrett, and we're your hosts of Modern Gaze. On today's episode, we have a special guest, actor Jason Caceres from the celebrated series Open to It. The show celebrates the complexities of modern queer relationships, merging love and sexual exploration. Jason will be sharing his insights and experiences, both from his role in the series and how he continues to build upon his success as an out and proud actor. So I have loved the show Open to It.
We have loved it. We have binged it. It's very light, quick, short.
It's a comedy.
10, 12-minute episodic episodes.
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious.
Sexy. It's
Hot,
ridiculous.
it's steamy. It's sexualis.
It's over the top. It's basically,
it's gay. It's camp. It's everything.
It's complicated. So the characters in the show are navigating threesomes, basically. Being in a throuple, potentially.
Wanting to open up their relationship, have some fun, have a bit of sexual exploration.
And you want to see the entire thing in one binge session.
Correct, because you actually want to see how that couple navigates having multiple different sexual encounters.
The sex scenes are
hot.
Hot tamale train.
Hot tamale train and intimate and close up.
But it's cool because it's a real show. Like, I don't know. It felt authentic. It felt like it's just not bullshit. It's not another show that just feels like it's tokenized. It actually is pretty real. Like,
I agree. And I think I actually really enjoyed the show and I cannot wait for season 2 to come out.
So speaking of throuples.
Yes.
I feel like it's now the mainstream thing. Everyone's talking about throuples. It's everywhere. It's
yeah, I feel like it was one of those things where everyone was just not speaking about it, but secretly into it.
So you have Couple to Throuple, which is a new reality television show
that just aired on Peacock and that we have also been binging. Let's just quickly give the lowdown on what the show is about. So there's 5 couples, all who are in serious long-term relationships. Many of them are polyamorous or pansexual, bisexual, queer, gay, very different sexualities and walks of life. And there are also the couples and the singles. So the couples each week get to decide whether they want to invite a new single into their
throuple,
double into a throuple, or keep their throuple that they've already got established. So it's very interesting. It's very complex. It's very dynamic.
It's also very
crazy,
complicated, and it's not really great for your emotional security and balance. What we've done is we have gamified, or not really gamified, but we have turned vulnerability into an entertainment category.
Correct.
This isn't really just a reality television show anymore. No. It's not even a dating show anymore.
There's high stakes.
There's high stakes because you're dealing with your mental health, your emotional clarity, your emotional intelligence.
People's relationships.
People's long-term relationships that are together for 9-10 years or whatever. There's breaks that happen. Not everyone leaves this show altogether.
Well, one of the couples have already developed a long-term throuple and they asked one of the girls to be their girlfriend.
The host is fun. They do challenges. It seems like there's a safe space for everyone to just really explore and navigate that. Then there is also a relationship coach who
to help guide them through it.
Yeah. And who's specifically trained in polyamory and complex open relationships. But at the same time, I watched the show with a little bit of reservation because I have a lot of, fear for some of them. I feel bad, and I feel like I'm getting emotionally invested in some of them.
No, don't feel bad for them. They've signed up for it. They want a throuple. They probably want a quadruple. Who freaking knows? But out of the show, what would you say that you have learned the most from observing people's relationships? That's the most. What would you say is the most important tool in a relationship so far from watching the show?
Oh, it's without a doubt, it's communication and your own awareness of what your love language is. So you talk about physical touch, or you talk about quality time. Certain things have certain types of weight or importance over another. You really need to be clear on what it is that you need so that you can then communicate what you need. And you also need to be aware of what the other needs so that you can give them. And I think when you're adding a third person, and then when you're swapping out that third person multiple times over multiple rounds, it's a very intense exercise. And it maybe
It's a lot of different energy.
if anything, it just makes you a better communicator.
Yeah, I would say that communication is definitely one that I took away from the show, but I would also say boundaries. Boundaries are very important. Being all on the same page, whether you're in a relationship or a throuple, I think setting clear boundaries within your relationship to not upset or offend the other person is very important.
Yes. Well, before we get into the show, I just want to call out your intro because yes, I want some barbecue sauce with that and not Chick-fil-A sauce.
Oh, that girl, she gagged me. She had me gag groups and laughing, girl.
If you have not seen this meme of this girl yet,
Chick-fil-A sauce?
I think she's hilarious. And she has some other fun content. I don't know if she's an actress or if she's a creator.
She's an actress.
But I don't know if she meant for that to go as viral. I don't know if it was her friend. I don't know what was going on.
I think it was just a combination of
good timing and happenstance.
It was a combination of the filter, the lines. She was at Chick-fil-A.
The tongue pop,
everything.
Yeah,
it was good. Girl.
I need to learn how to do a tongue pop like you and this girl.
Snaps for you, girl. Snaps for you. Get us the next one at In-N-Out or something, girl.
So before we introduce our guest today, Jason, please tongue pop your way over to our review section on whatever podcast platform you may be listening to. If you love the show, leave us 5 stars and join the conversation on Instagram and Threads.
Us gays, we just know how to do stuff.
Well, what about modern gays?
That's easy. Modern gays do everything.
Today, we're thrilled to have with us a truly inspiring emerging figure in the LGBTQ plus film and TV space, Jason Caceres. He's lighting up everything from music videos to major series, capturing our hearts and starting conversations along the way. Recently, he's been part of stories that challenge, entertain, and enlighten us, especially in his latest project, Open to It.
We're going to dive into his experiences on set, what it's like working with superstar drag queens, Manila, Luzon, and Laganja, Estranja, and navigating the entertainment landscape as an out, proud actor. Jason, thank you so much for joining us on Modern Gays.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was really cool to see Open to It. And a lot of people in our community here in Melbourne are talking about the show. What we are missing in our community is more dynamic, rich stories of queer experiences, LGBTQ plus experiences, just authentic stories that don't feel pigeonholed. We want to see comedy and drama and different approaches to creating rich stories that we feel represented and feel that we can experience, but also enjoy and go on that ride.
What initially attracted me to the show was the fact that it was so light and campy and funny. While there is a lot of queer representation in media now, it does tend to lean a little dark and a little, I very lovingly use the phrase trauma porn, which is fair. Those stories are valid and have a place, but gay people are well-rounded individuals. We live full lives. Yes, sometimes the coming out process is very dramatic. Obviously, it's very important to highlight the AIDS crisis because it brought us to where we are today. But that's not the entirety of what our community is. And what Open to It does so well is that it's just a show about people who happen to be gay, not a show about gay people. We see a fully developed relationship. We see these characters go through, it's a sitcom, so situational comedies where they're trying to experiment with an open relationship and the things that go wrong with it. It's really funny, actually, because one reviewer said that it would be nice to have seen in the show that, oh, a throuple can work out and not be very dramatic. And just, it would have been nice to see that. And I'm like, well, the point of the show is to be funny about the happenstances that happen in these throuples. So there's a place for that, obviously. I know many successful throuples, but this show is about the miscommunications, the silliness, the funniness, and how a couple can have that strong base and experiment with a third and not have it really be this negative light on the couple, or like, oh, this shame of like, you shouldn't do that because a relationship should be about two people. There are many kinds of relationships. So what initially drew me to the show, to go back to the question, was that it was so fun and campy and light. My character was actually supposed to be only in the first 3 episodes. I was supposed to be written out. But then Frank, who's the creator, director of the show and the lead, we developed this close friendship. He would let me pitch ideas, and then he would pitch ideas. And through working on set, so many comical things actually happened that he left in the show, which is why it probably feels like much more authentic and less like a written show. We just created this storyline for Princeton that became very, very funny and is now kind of like at the heart of the show, which I love.
Garrett and I have recently been watching the new series, Couple to Throuple.
Which is like a reality television show where these very open-minded couples of different backgrounds come onto basically
like a Love Island.
Where they're introduced to a bunch of singles and then they get paired up. They're navigating it like live on television.
It's so funny because Frank sent the trailer to the whole cast and crew of Open to It. It was like, wow, we must be somewhere, we must be like vibing with the zeitgeist because everybody's like doing throuple things now. And it's just so representative of modern culture also, where like relationships are not what they used to look like. And that's okay. It's so important to represent that.
Yeah, and we put this show on with my parents, like sitting next to us, and we were like,
they were like, we cannot watch this.
What is going on? We need to change. I mean, they're very open-minded. They listen to this show, and they're just like so welcoming and so cool. But at the same time, that was still...
It can be a bit much for some people.
They were like, no, this is not something I want to watch. And I was like, interesting.
My mom has asked me where she can watch Open to It, and I'm like, it's not out yet. It's not out. It's the strangest thing. We were, doing so many interviews, but I haven't seen it.
Right. I'll send you the trailer.
So she saw the trailer, and then she called me because the trailer's out on YouTube. And she called me and she was like, "So what is this film you're doing? That looks like your nipple that was being sucked on." And I was like, no, what? Why did Frank have to put that in the trailer? So my mom has seen Frank suck on my nipple.
Talking about how this throuple idea is now much more mainstream, or it's a mainstream conversation, at least, where people are almost like opening to it first as a heterosexual relationship. Like there's a lot of heterosexual polyamory, or pansexual experimentation on television shows like Love Triangle and Couple to Throuple. And when it comes to reality presentation, people are produced. It's still a show. You're still putting on a bit of an entertainment,
a bit of drama,
but on a scripted show, there is that level of freedom to, like you said, when you were written into the first 3 episodes and then were expanded into the series because of what unfolded on set, what unfolded in the story and the narrative. That is so cool because you get to be more playful and creative and really build a rich life. So I want to kind of go back to where you started, where you grew up, and your experience in becoming the creative soul that you are today. Were you always into entertaining and creating stories and dramas and acting and being a performer?
My mom had us in like 5,000 activities growing up because it kept us off the streets, the dangerous streets of Miami. My brother and I were in soccer, baseball, swimming, art classes, like all mediums, painting, acting. So we kind of did a little bit of everything growing up, which is great because you were able to try out a bunch of different things very early and see what you attach to. And then we were Boy Scouts. So I started to like acting a lot actually in the Boy Scouts because we would have these yearly camping trip competitions, builds forts and rope tying contests. But then there was a skit contest. And I was like, ooh, I want to do that one. I became, I guess, kind of like in charge of developing these funny little skits for my Boy Scout troop so that we could put them up for the competition. And I started really, really liking that. So I started doing theater classes in middle school, high school. And then once I graduated, I had a little bit of a panic. I was like, what should I be? A doctor? A lawyer? So my first semester of college was a mess. And I was like, you know what? I like theater. Screw it. I'm just going to do theater. So I got a degree in theater performance and then moved out to Los Angeles afterwards.
Wow.
You were in Boy Scouts for a long time.
For like 10 years. Because I started at 5, and then by 15, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that was a huge argument with my parents.
Okay, wait, I have a first question as an Australian. What is a Boy Scout?
Oh.
It's like an after-school club for boys to teach them to be more well-rounded men. Okay. So you learn how to pitch a tent in more ways than one. I'm kidding. Well, kind of kidding. So you learn how to like pitch a tent. You learn how to cook. You learn how to survive in the wilderness. There's sewing badges. So you just like collect badges as you go through this program. And it's a lifelong thing. People start from 5, I think is the youngest you can be, all the way up to 18 when you graduate high school and you graduate the Boy Scouts, and you graduate with a wealth of useless knowledge because we live in a concrete jungle now. So I will never willingly pitch a tent.
Exactly.
In that way.
Exactly.
Well, do you feel like you still have friendships and support like from the Boy Scouts?
I wish I did. Because I grew up with them. It was 10 years, but I did not. Coming out had a little bit to do with that.
I think this is a unique, interesting environment to grow up in because you are learning community and you're learning about supporting one another and getting tangible or tactile skills in the wilderness or whatever. But then you grow up, and for me at least, like I know that I wasn't necessarily like sure of who I was. I was figuring out my identity, my sexual identity, what I was interested in, what I wanted to do. And I found that I spent so many years growing up with a group of friends that weren't very much like me, or I wasn't interested in the same things. So I kind of naturally drifted apart. But what is really cool that I didn't experience, that you did find something really powerful in that, which was the point to put on these skits, to like put on shows and be creative, and then also have that be your inspiration to continue your education and launch you into a career of acting and performance. That's pretty cool.
You did your theatrical degree, you moved to LA, and then what next? What happened?
Lots of crying. Lots of crying. LA is not for the weak. I've always had a very strong work ethic, and I think that comes from being a child of immigrants, because my parents came over from Cuba when they were, I think, 21, 22, and worked really, really hard for any scraps that they got their entire lives here in the US. So they definitely instilled a work ethic of like, you won't get anything unless you work for it, because no one's just going to hand you success. Upon landing, that first week here in LA, bought showcase packages, workshop packages. I spent about $5,000, I believe, in my first month here, just signing up for these opportunities to be seen, which kind of turned out to be a little scammy later down the line. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the whole casting director workshop scandal. So I moved out here with an agent who I was already being represented by in Florida. She was starting an agency at the same time in Los Angeles as I was moving. So she was still representing me. This never happens. I'm moving to LA with representation. That was very short-lived, because she then just called me up out of nowhere and told me I had to take accent reduction classes. So I'm thinking, I'm in Los Angeles. Do I sound too Cuban? Do I sound like too Miami? She says, no, it's to get rid of the gay in my voice.
Oh.
Because it's not marketable.
No.
She basically said I was too gay, and I was shocked. It kind of hurt, because it was like, I don't think I can get rid of my voice. I also don't want to. And she got upset. She dropped me from her agency. She dropped my roommate at the time. She like cleaned house. And then I found my next agent, who was this wonderful lesbian woman that went on to represent me for 6-7 years after that.
No, that's incredible, because I think that when you're ready for a massive change and you're going through a stage of new opportunity, people sometimes just figure it out themselves and clear themselves out. In that journey from landing in LA and meeting some casting agents and hustling in a town that's quite hard to hustle in, to to find your people and your balance and your foundation and also the kind of projects you want to be doing. What has that process been like when selecting projects and working with different directors and filmmakers to get to the point in your career that you are right now?
That's a great question. I took the route of not being incredibly selective because I don't have that luxury, or I didn't have that luxury when I first got here. My only requirement was that it had to pay. I could not work for free because rent is very expensive. I didn't have experience. I didn't have credits. I didn't have a demo reel. So I wanted to build all of that first. I submitted for everything. I still do. I think the major downside of most actors is that once they get representation, they stop working. They're like, that's great. I have an agent who's going to do the work for me and look for jobs. But there's this great saying that I love. Your agent only gets 10% of your paycheck. So they should be responsible for 10%
of the work. Yeah.
In the 90%.
Yeah, fair.
You know? That's very true.
So, and it's a symbiotic relationship. You're supposed to help each other out. So what is your agent going to do with an actor who just sits at home waiting for a job? It's not the best look, in my opinion. So I still kind of self-submit and seek out projects actively because then they have something to show casting. Like, look, he's doing this. He's working. He's trying to make something happen.
What's your challenges around navigating casting and audition briefs and feeling confident about going into specific auditions, being so openly and confidently gay?
I would say that took a lot of work, to be honest, because at first I had a lot of experiences that weren't that. There's this idea that actors need to be a blank slate. And like you walk into a room and the production or casting can like picture you in different roles. So be as bland as possible until you start your audition and create the character. Especially after what happened with that agent, I tried to kind of like dull down the gayness, the queerness, so to speak. As I got older and just started having a little bit more life experience, I've come to realize that I'm actually booking more work just being myself. And I had an acting coach that helped with this also. Great man. His name's Brian Norris. I will name drop him because he was fantastic. Who would help me coach these auditions. And I would get in my head and be like, oh, am I too gay? Am I being too gay? And I remember I was auditioning for a role of a young firefighter once. And in my head, he was like, he had to be like straight and brawny. And he just stops and he's like, are you not aware that there are gay firefighters? Nowhere on this paper does it say he needs to be straight or mask or manly man. You're creating that. Your job as an actor who's auditioning is to present a version of the character they wrote. And the producers will look at them and be like, oh, I want to buy this one, or I want to buy this one. It's a product that you're selling. And if they don't want a gay firefighter today, maybe they'll want one tomorrow. And they saw your audition and they're like, he was a great gay firefighter. Let's bring him back to the episode. I just try to bring myself to every role that's presented because there are so many different versions of a character that could exist. Why would a gay firefighter not work in the scene?
Yeah,
that's very true.
You have done so many projects that are celebrated specifically within the gay community now through that lens. Do you feel like you want to continue to focus on projects that share LGBTQ plus or queer life experiences, or does that not really come into play when you're thinking about what projects you want to do?
I will always say yes to a queer project. Always. Because I do believe there needs to be more queer representation. There's this false idea that there's so much queer representation now and it's just like overflooding the market. If you really break it down, there isn't. And they're dialing them back. Most gay shows that were mainstream are now canceled or have ended or wrapped. Networks get a little nervous and are like, no, we got to end it. It went too far. So if I, for the rest of my career, do only exclusively queer work and can pay my bills, I'm totally okay with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you have networks like Out TV or Daddy TV production company, and even like WOW, which is the RuPaul conglomerate. There's so many more platforms building out that are offering kind of unapologetic collection of authentic stories that are now continuing to push that conversation on a mainstream level. Do you think that you now have a responsibility, or do you have a sense of being a leader or being someone who is really a representation of our voice? You're your own creative, you're your own person, you're an actor, you're a performer, and you're building your own career, you're living your own life. But at the same time, you will have fans and people who like love your work and want to connect with you. And on another level, you're really becoming quite inspirational. And you are the person on the screen that a younger kid will see and be like, oh, I want to be like him. Do you ever think about that? Or how does it affect you?
I can't say that it's an active part of my thought process, because it doesn't, I don't know. It feels, even you saying that, I'm like, yeah, okay. It doesn't feel like that's actually a thing. But then I also remember being 14 and like trying to seek out any gay television show that I could find. And the only thing was like Queer as Folk and Skins, which was a UK show that had minor gay representation. And I would like stream it. And then I remember coming across Alan Broca's work and the Eating Out movies and the original Boy Culture. I do remember looking up to those actors, which is really, really cool that I got to be in the Boy Culture sequel. It kind of like came full circle. I will continue to push gay media and representation, and it's important because we're very lucky that we live in a bubble here in Los Angeles where it feels like we've arrived, basically. Like, we're here, we're queer, there's nothing else happening. Everybody loves us. But that's very specific to like these major cities like Miami, Los Angeles. Less so now given the current state of politics. So I try to put myself in the shoes of people in places where they don't have that much representation. They don't have that liberty to be themselves. They are very much so still in danger if they go out in drag, if they are transitioning, if they hold hands with their partner on a date. Like, that could be life-threatening. So I will always continue to push queer media and queer representation, because I am of the belief that the more people see it, the less of a big deal it becomes.
We saw some familiar faces because we're obsessed with RuPaul's Drag Race, and we've had the chance to talk to a few queens from the show. And seeing Laganja Estranja, I didn't expect her to be in the show based off of what we were just chatting about on representation and being a voice and having strength and presence for, you know, our full community, which includes trans actors and drag performers and everyone that has a different gender identity or sexual identity that feels and wants to be seen and heard, especially in the creative and the entertainment space. How was it like on set being able to have those scenes and also know that the cast itself was quite dynamic and interesting and played into drag culture a bit?
I mean, it's amazing. Laganja is a consummate professional, I will say. She shows up, she knows her lines, she knows her blocking, she gives suggestions. She's so easy to work with. We just actually finished shooting a Pride special episode for Open to It that'll go in between season 1 and season 2. And it's a drag story hour concept. I can't say much else about it because there's a lot of like surprises and stuff. But Laganja's in it, Pandora's in it, Honey Davenport, Defies in Drag that are huge on YouTube. They're in it. It's such a celebration of drag culture. And I will say, drag queens on set are probably the most fun and the most professional at the same time than any other actor I've ever met, because they want to be there. They want to share their art. They want this representation. They take it seriously, and they can still mix in a little fun, which is always a blast. And of course, Manila plays my roommate on the show. She's hysterical. They're just a good time to be around. I love having drag queens on set.
How did you start developing Princeton. How did you feel like you wanted to create this person? And how close is that person to you? And how much of you did you put into that performance?
I think Princeton has helped my personality develop into what it is, as opposed to me develop Princeton into who he is. Because which is such a cliche thing for an actor to say. I know, I can hear the eye rolls. At first, would not say that I was very similar to Princeton, because I'm introverted and I'm not very outgoing at first. Meeting new people drives my anxiety up the wall. So I'm like, do they like me? Will they, I don't know, talk shit about me after I leave? Do I look okay? So there's so many insecurities, and they're like regular people insecurities mixed with gay person insecurities mixed with actor insecurities. So it's like a trifecta of insecurities. And Princeton presents from the first episode as this kind of self-assured, confident, hot twink who does not care what you think about him. And he knows what he wants, and he's going to go for it. I have Frank to credit for this, because we've been doing the show for 2 years and we've become best friends. And so he's seen me go through a few life hardships in the past 2 years, when it comes to like my personal life and my relationships. And he turned around one day, I'm like crying to him over drinks. And he turned to me and he goes, the power available to you as Princeton is also available to you as Jason. And that kind of stuck with me. I was like, you're right. So I can show up on set, pretend to be this super confident sex pot. But then in my life, I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. And ever since then, he's kind of changed the way I handle my life. So it still feels a little put on sometimes, because I'll have moments where I'm like, okay, this is happening. This is real life, but I need to access this confidence right now. So I'll kind of put on the Princeton persona a little bit, which I'm now made fun of for by our group of friends, but it's greatly benefited me.
Knowing the script and knowing Princeton's perception or idea on the show, entering into the throuple environment and being that third, what was your initial mindset and approach on the idea of a throuple?
Before this project, I had played a few go-go boys and strippers. That part of the character I had already had experience with. As far as throuple, I think I was just exploring or playing with the idea of communication, because for something like this to work so well like it does in the show, there needs to be a cognizant level of communication between all parties involved. So the idea that Princeton would come in and give equal attention to both men, be just as honest with both men. There's no real ulterior motive to his character, because it all comes from just a very honest, this is what I want, this is who I am kind of place. So that notion was a little difficult to figure out at first, because I mean, dating in LA, nobody is honest. Everybody has ulterior motives. So where Princeton doesn't and just dates like that, adding a third person to the mix was a little complicated. But luckily the writing kind of informed it, so I didn't have to work too hard.
Yeah. As you built the character and really focused on communication, as an actor, you really allowed that to feel super authentic. And I felt like that was really clear and expressive across the screen. In that, did you feel like throuples are not for you? Or like, did you feel like this open your mind or make you think anything that you want to take into the next role, or maybe take into your life, or made you think differently about relationships? Like you say, you kept Princeton with you in a way in your back pocket. Did that affect you in any way? Yes. Yes, it did. One of the major lesson that I took with me is communication, and that it's okay to be vulnerable in these kind of moments. I think the Princeton arc is something that we landed on because, again, the main couple is so strong already. And like their arc comes from the comedy of the happenstances. Whereas now we can see Princeton, or a character, go from confident, I don't care about anything, to I'm slowly starting to develop feelings for two men. How does that work? How does being in a throuple
work in this world, in this environment, but it's a throuple, but they're still open. So they're also still seeing other men. And Princeton is seeing other men, but there's like a core polyamorous connection. So it's led me to include a little bit more vulnerability in my life, a little bit more openness, to be open to new experiences. Somehow this show and all the characters' lives has started to creep into everybody's personal life. So it's kind of like, instead of art imitating life, it's life imitating art now.
I feel like when you have something that's so authentic and something that's so real, that line is blurred like a lot faster, you know?
Definitely blurred. It's definitely, Frank makes the joke that I must be a method actor because now, let's just say I encountered a similar experience while filming the second season. So,
speaking of second season, and it's so exciting to see this show continue to grow and have more and more people become fans. What are you most excited about the show? Where is it going? What other projects do you think that this can lead to as well?
In season 2, the Christmas episode, and it's kind of where Princeton's arc reaches a climax. So I'm really excited for that to come out. And we just actually got word, season 2 just got picked up, so it just sold. So we see season 2 take Princeton to this extremely vulnerable, life-changing moment where he has like this self-discovery. And then it goes quickly back to mayhem. So it's kind of like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of situation, which is very comical. And it's very true to life also, because we do things like that all the time. And we are currently in talks about season 3. So we're already talking about storylines. Frank is outlining episodes. So I'm excited for it to continue. I don't know what color my hair will be because I think we've done all the colors by now. I'm excited to continue living in this show. It's so much fun. And it's also kind of important in a way that it's not.
Yeah, I can say that.
It doesn't take itself too seriously, which is great when you're reading the script and you're like, oh my God, this is going to happen. Okay,
right.
How's that going to happen? That full dynamic experience of being in a relationship or being in a throuple
or having a threesome
or whatever. Those scenes were actually shot quite authentically.
It was pretty real.
I mean, it's quite provocative.
Yeah.
But
well, our intimacy coordinator, Wes, is actually works in adult entertainment. So he was hired specifically to make the scenes look real and not kind of something out of like, I mean, we've all seen the famous scene in White Lotus where it's like, that is not where a butthole is. And we all know that, and it does not look real and it takes you out of it. So he was hired specifically to make it look good on camera, because there are ways you can do that where it's still not porn, but it looks real. And sex in real life is funny and messy and
awkward sometimes.
Awkward. So I love that we can capture that also.
You have several more projects coming out, and the kinds of work that you want to really be focusing on. What does that look like in the next couple years ahead?
I want to keep producing work that pushes the boundary, pushes the envelope a little bit, makes people think. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a philosophical Oscar-winning drama, but even like this silly little sex comedy has caused a little bit of controversy in some publications and some articles that are like, well, this is fluff. Why do we need this? Well, because you're questioning its validity, and that's the point of art. So I hope to continue making queer media like this, whether it's silly or has a deeper meaning or is a little darker. I hope my career continues in this trajectory that it's going.
Yeah, and I guess continuing to do the work that you get to do, where you take on so many projects and get to live so many different lives and to share so many different experiences, because it has been really enjoyable watching your work, because it just feels so authentic again, and it feels so real and valid and relatable. And we definitely have enjoyed that a lot.
Absolutely. Speaking of being so authentic yourself, as a final little send-off to all of our listeners, what would be a message to anyone that is maybe struggling to be their most authentic self, and some wisdom you could share with them?
I struggle with this question because I want to say, fuck it. Be yourself. Who cares what people think? But I also want everyone to be safe. So proceed with caution. You know your limits. And if that means you have to dim your light a little bit until you can move yourself to a better situation, the long game is always better, especially nowadays. Proceed with caution, lead with safety, and you will eventually find your people. But I guess if I were younger, I'd be a little bit more brazen and be like, fuck it. If they don't like you, who cares? But with life experience also comes, that's not the safest way to do everything in today's culture. So if you can get yourself out of a situation that's not the safest, do that. The long game is always worth it.
Yeah, no, that's super valuable because not everyone is growing up in Miami or LA in a family or a community
in
that
the bubble,
supports them,
like we said.
in a bubble.
Right.
And it's important that everyone's journey is their own. You know, like they have their own timing, their own speed, their own pace.
Yeah.
But that's great. Like the long game is the goal, right? Well, thank you again so much for joining us on today's episode. It's been such a pleasure to connect with you and hear more of your stories and really about where our fandom is, which is in true, authentic, real gay stories, but stories about people who just happen to be gay.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
A huge thank you to Jason for joining us today and sharing his story. And for those who haven't yet, please make sure to check out Open to It for a taste of his work. And remember, this conversation doesn't end here. Head over to our Instagram and Threads to share your thoughts and stay subscribed for more episodes. Thanks for listening. And until next time, keep building the vibrant life you want by being your most authentic self.